amazing things that happen if you let them happen. I think there's a real rhythm in life. And somebody said, what do you like about photography? And I just saw the other day, it's sort of like learning mathematics. The deeper you go into mathematics, it's not for recognition, it's not for any kind of awareness other than your own discovery of deeper rhythms and deeper truths that you have in common with the universe or with yourself. And mathematics is something that you do for no personal glory if you go deep. And there's many other ways to do it. So I've been intrigued by the wonder. You wander around and wonderful things happen. Doesn't mean that they're all wonderful, it's just amazing things. I mean, this is a picture taken in Mexico. I travel and always looking for interesting things. And this is a church. Obviously the Spaniards have arrived. They put the painting up. They told the Mexicans that they should no longer believe in what they were believing, but believe in what the Spaniards brought with them. So there they go, and they look up, and I guess they're supposed to see the light. And over the centuries, a chandelier gets dropped in there, and somebody drops a light bulb out of the chandelier. Which of those white lights are the ones you're supposed to believe? And then, of course, the chandelier is casting a shadow of itself, which, by definition, it can't do. Chandeliers don't create shadows of themselves. They're the source of light. So the incongruity of all of that, which is the real light, the one down below, the one in the middle, the one above, the shadow of the light. Some things are statistically impossible. Chandeliers don't cast shadows of themselves. But who would have said the greatest job-creating engine in the history of the planet Earth is the Chinese Communist Party? Think about it. Who else has been creating jobs at the 50, 100 million a clip record? And obviously there's a lot of other issues surrounding with China, but it's a lot about what really is true and what isn't true, and try to distinguish the borderline between what is and what isn't really true. We were thinking about this in a couple ways, and I just want to provoke, and anybody interrupt, but think of the idea of success. Success is something that most people strive for. What does a business person do with a successful formula? They tend to find it and franchise it and repeat it. A genuine artist, when he gets to a successful formula, will be often very frustrated. And if a genuine artist repeats the formula endlessly, they become boring. I won't mention a painter who makes the same painting over and over again for 30 years. Do we need another cartoon? And whereas Picasso, on the other hand, when he got to solve a particular problem, abandoned it instead of repeating it. So he abandoned this and went to Cubism, and Cubism back to drawing, and drawing over to pottery, and pottery over to sculpture, and came back to painting 7 or 8 times with extraordinary fresh vision. So I was asked, why do you like investment strategy and photography? And thinking about it, it occurred to me that both of them have in common a couple of things, one of which is the ability to see what things are there. To have some sense of an understanding, maybe a vision, but you really try to get into the essence of what's actually there. You don't, except currently, go in and manipulate everything in there. The tradition is you see things as they are, you have an understanding, you frame it, and share it. You could be right, you could be wrong. You're often quite wrong, but the framing and sharing of an understanding is really what we do in the investment strategy world. As a surfer would never try to tell a wave to occur here but not there. As a good skier would never tell a mountain what to do. Their job is to understand the natural rhythms of the mountain or the surf, and the better they understand what's really going on, the better they're going to be at harnessing that to create art, which is what surfing is. There's no practical application of surfing. But whereas other people, and let me just pick on investment bankers, might say, you, do this, stand up, roll over, paw, move at my command. And it doesn't usually work. The one at the end with the trapeze, if you've seen it, if not, happy to look at it. There's a person flying through space at the moment of weightlessness, when you think you're going up, but you haven't quite come down, and he's reaching for a rope. Which rope does he grab? The real rope, the shadow of the rope, the embroidered rope? What's the right rope? I said, that's sort of like government leaders right now. What's working? Monetary, fiscal, regulatory, nothing? Greece, Berlusconi, Corzine yesterday. What do you do? What's the real truth? And so a lot of this is going in and out of that. This one intrigued me. This, when does a bird cast a shadow of itself on the sky? Or a leaf cast a shadow of itself on the sky? It can't. And so a lot of it is the enigma between what's real and what's not real, what makes sense. And a couple of other thoughts. I mentioned successful ideas and the knowledge that in order to be successful, you have to abandon what works. Or you stick with it. But a lot of people stuck with things from 07 and 08 and 09 in the financial markets and realized too late that the world had completely inverted. The smart ones who somehow picked up in 06 or 07 that there were tremendous successes, back to the trapeze, and they had to reverse. Instead of levering money, they had to unlever. They had to delever very quickly. Or a few of them saw it early enough to say, if that's the case, I'm going to put my bet on for the unwinding of leverage. So go back and forth between finance, business, art, anything else. I mean, Google. has taught us many things, but one of the most interesting things I think it's taught us is that most of us were educated in a world where teachers defined the problems and we were told to go find the answers. So it was the research we did and the footnotes thereunder that made for a day. We now know that answers are easy. In fact, they're free. What's important is to determine what's the right question. And don't let anybody tell you what the question is that you should be answering, because they're usually coming from a successful formula that's largely irrelevant. I think success also leads to a conservative nature in the pursuit of annuity in your thinking rather than the pursuit of integrity or original insight. So what I'm intrigued with a lot of these pictures is that borderline. How do you make better decisions? And how do you learn to walk away from successful opportunities? I mentioned having been trained in the pursuit of answers, we now know that the world goes to those who redefine the question. And how much information do you need to have an important decision? Something I've been intrigued in. You really don't need an encyclopedia full of information to make decisions. In fact, you can have too much information. You can become an expert, in which case you're then often incapable of making really wise transitory decisions. And some people with their gut, particularly artists, know how to make decisions based on a whole series of criteria, not just more and more information. Because nothing would have told you, based on information alone, that 06, 07, 08 were tremendous excess. Some people, and Charlie has a remarkable business of figuring these out, look at other sources. The other thing I want to respect between art, investment, the world of finance, is a tremendous respect for clarity. I could say it's what's missing most in the world right now. The political level is clarity of purpose, clarity of understanding, clarity of direction. We've got people fighting with each other. In this side, there's 2 sides of the aisle, but there's probably 4 sides in Greece. In Europe yesterday, whatever it is, there's 17 sides. They don't even agree on the problem, much less the solution. And so I think there's a desire for clarity, and I think artists, photographers in particular, also have to be very aware of the importance to say something, but say it with relative clarity. Or if they're going to create an ambiguity, let it be an interesting ambiguity. For that picture over there in the corner, I was really interested in surrealism. And so I took books, was reading books, and I checked this one book out of the library. And the librarian grabs me, opens to the page of Duchamp's famous drawing, and she says, the person who checked this out before put a mustache and goatee on it, and I've spent hours trying to erase this. Do not further debase this book. And I'm laughing my head off because the lady has no clue what she's just done or said. She totally missed it. So I was laughing at this librarian erasing. And I was looking at the book, reading it, and I was in Spain, and they have small little fried fish like changuetes, almost like French fries here. And I was looking at them, eating them, and then I looked, one of these fish came out with 2 eyeballs on either side. And I looked at it, looked at the picture, and said, ooh. I took the little fish up and gave her the eyeballs. So if you go closely later on, she's got eyeballs of a fish, a mustache that's been erased and a goatee that's been erased, and we put a little fish on a stick. And it's sort of Da Vinci, Dali, the librarian primarily. And I just recognizing the irony of her complete misunderstanding of what she was doing, but with a good intent. Over there's a video of a bunch of people wrapping a package. These are Bangladesh immigrants after a year working in Saudi, going home. So they take all their worldly possessions. And what intrigued me, and I was standing at the airport, is they just kept wrapping it and putting more knots in the package. 4 knots, 14 knots, 24, 34 knots, and they keep wrapping it and wrapping it and wrapping it. Well, we would know that more knots on a package doesn't make it get there faster or safer. Somewhere north of 4 or 5 knots, it's irrelevant. But I said, well, this is the securities market. This is the CDOs and the CLOs and the derivatives. How many times can you wrap the same thing up and pretend you're creating something more insightful, more valuable, more safer? So that's sort of an analogy, and then it works perfectly with the rhythm on the floor and whatnot. So a lot of the pictures have to do with that funny space. The yellow taxi driver there, that's in New York, and he was walking across, and I filmed the video. I was primarily attracted by these vibrating tapes that were creating a moving sculpture. As you probably picked up, I love to find, whether it's red, abstract art occurring in real life. And the guy in the lower right corner there, I'm waiting on the border to go into Saudi. This man shows up, and he starts painting the street. It was a long line, and he just painted. I said, this is a beautiful piece of abstract painting just occurring right in front of me. Well, so why be frustrated with a long line of customs? Just enjoy the guy making a painting. And so it's a lot of the appearance of abstract. So walking on Astor Place a couple months ago, and I see this vibrating plastic construction tape, and it's really amazing. And it'll pop up over there in a minute. And then I'm looking down and and this man walks into it. He just walks straight across. I didn't mean to shoot the man, or photograph, I should say, but he just walked into the frame. And a lot of what's going on here is that if you keep your eyes open and you're alert and you have a fair dose of humility, things can occur in your frame that are quite remarkable. But if your head's not tuned in, you won't see it. And those of you who make photographs know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes you sort of get a hunch, or you have a sound, or you have a noise, or you get a smell. You don't know what's going to happen. And so many of the great photographs have been made when you're incredibly in tune and you allow something to unfold in front of you. John Cage taught us more about that than anybody else. But this man walks across, and then in the editing process we get the idea to do still but moving. A lot of these pictures are still, but something's moving inside. And then editing process, slice it in the middle, so the left side is the video, the right side is the screen grab, and there's this man disappearing into himself. Well, I can make a lot of metaphors about important men, or rather men disappearing into their own self-importance. I probably should have used an investment banker, maybe John Corzine or somebody.